Coming up this week, we're going to talk about the most recent Right of First Refusal report and what it means for DVC members. Coming up on this week's episode of the DVC Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Coming to you from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table this week by my good friends Paul Krieger.
Hey, everybody.
Derek DeBoer.
Hey, now.
Sue Saunders.
Hey there.
And our producer, Mr. Corey Fiescanaro.
Welcome home.
And before we get started, just a reminder, this show is brought to you by the World of DVC. That includes DVCResaleMarket.com, where you can get a great deal on a DVC contract, or if you want to sell your contract and upgrade like I'm doing, you can give these nice folks a call and they'll help you sell it. DVCRentalStore.com, where you can rent out your points if you've got points that are going to expire or you know you're not going to use. Nice way to make some money on them. Or if you're interested in trying DVC before you buy, it's a very, very cost-effective way of doing that. And of course, MoneraFinancial.com, where you can finance your DVC contract. They make it painfully easy to do that, painfully easy. So give them a try as well. Okay, so I thought we should talk about the most recent Right of First Refusal report. This one is from September. Every month, DVCResaleMarket.com publishes information about which contracts Disney bought back in that month. And for those who aren't familiar with this, Disney Vacation Club retains the right of first refusal if you choose to sell your contract. This is one of the ways they kind of control how much these points sell for. So if you sell your contract at, I don't know, Saratoga Springs, and you put it up for $120 a point, before that deal and somebody accepts that, before that deal can go through, Disney has the right to say, yeah, that's too low, we're going to buy it back. They will buy it at that price, and you don't get your contract. The seller gets paid, but the person trying to buy the contract, not so much. So this report really helps you divine what price, what contracts might go. And again, it changes from month to month. It sometimes changes from week to week. It's one of the tea leaves we read to kind of determine what's going on, right? And that's probably the best way to describe it.
I like that analogy.
It's one of the tea leaves that we read.
It's the September tea leaf report.
It's the September tea leaf report, exactly. Now, we were talking, right before we started recording, we were talking about Saratoga. And they're kind of getting a little aggressive buying back Saratoga. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, the Saratoga in between September and August, they went up to $132 a point on buybacks, where it was at $127. So we're steadily seeing Saratoga going up, and it was the most bought back resort, that in the Animal Kingdom.
And do we have any idea why they would, suddenly, all of a sudden, start buying back Saratoga?
I can tell you it'd be the biggest reality show of all time if we can put a camera in the Rofer room there at Disney Vacation Club and see what they do. Is it this dart over here or this one over there? It's definitely, like Sue said, it's just one of the processes that people have to do when they buy a resale contract. And a lot of people don't know that it is part of the process. And like Pete said, for a seller, it's a win-win, right? Because you're going to sell it. If Disney decides to buy it back, it's at that price that you already sold it for. It's then the buyer then has to basically go ahead and I'm going to try another contract, right? I'll move my escrow over, put it to another contract, roll the dice, and then try again. What's great is our website. So everything that we're talking about today, visit, dvcresalemarket.com. You can hit the blog button that's in the upper right and just type in the words ROFR, and you could see this each and every month. It's probably the most popular blog that we do is the Rofer Report, because like Pete said, it's a tea leaf reader, right?
Yeah.
It's because that's why Disney does Rofer. It's a needful part of this process. That's why you don't see Disney Vacation Club contracts online like every other timeshare for $5, $1, $10. Yeah. It's a needed part of the process. And what's great, this is not the be all end all, right? So we don't know what Disney is going to buy a contract back at whatever price, but what we have is statistical information that you can go back and see, oh, wow. So last month, as you can see, when you go to the report, you'll see that 95%, which is crazy when I saw this, 95% of all the buybacks that they did the month of September were for 3 resorts, right? Animal Kingdom, Saratoga Springs, and this year's perennial favorite is Old Key West, which almost close to, I think, Sue, if I'm not mistaken, like 40% of all Old Key West contracts are being bought back. Crazy. So, yeah, it's crazy, which makes sense because, we've done shows where we've talked about Old Key West, and it's a no-brainer for Disney, Sue, right?
Sure, because with Old Key West, what they're getting right now is when they buy a contract back, Disney adds on the extra 15 years and sells it at a much higher price. So it's a great one for them to be able to buy back if the price gives them a better margin on it.
Disney looking for a way to make a profit. Interesting.
No.
I'm glad they finally caught on to that.
But okay, so that explains Old Key West for me. But explain, I don't get Saratoga Springs. Are they going to start doing that with Saratoga Springs, do you think?
Saratoga will always be the number one volume that we sell at the Disney Vacation Club, just because it's the largest resort that Disney has.
And their dues are low.
And the dues are low. Always, honestly, every year, every quarter, I think maybe with the exception of maybe one quarter, Saratoga Springs always turns out to be the best bang for the buck for when you're buying a timeshare, right? When you're buying a Disney Vacation Club ownership, because we look at price, you look at dues, and you look at the length of the deed. So Saratoga is probably a great one for Disney. A, they have a ton of points. B, it's probably the number one drop down for Disney Vacation Club guides when they're selling direct, meaning you're sitting with a guest and they say, hey, I can't afford the Riviera contract. I love the club, but this is too rich for my blood. They say, all of a sudden they pull out a sheet that says, well, we have some Saratoga Springs points that are XXX amount of dollars. So it helps them be able to not let that guest go so they can get them to join the club.
And I want you to keep in mind that both Derek and Sue were DVC guides.
Yep.
They worked for DVC, selling DVC contracts. So they kind of have, that's one of the things I really like about DVC resale market is that everybody was a former guide. So you know the ins and outs.
Right.
So it's very fascinating to me when I hear stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, that really is so important for us, for Disney Vacation Club guides, being there direct is you want to get that guest to join the club, right? And if they can't do it for this resort, what other tricks of the trade? What else can I pull out of my bag of tricks to be like, don't leave yet, I have this, or I have this resort. So Saratoga is always going to be a great drop-down product.
And especially, too, you've got a lot of people who can't afford Riviera. And they still want to be members of the club, but they want something that has a little bit longer term on the contract, and they don't want high dues. Saratoga's perfect.
Right, because Saratoga's 2054?
2054.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's 2054. So, but you don't see so much on Boardwalk. You don't see a lot of buyback on Boardwalk. And, of course, the Right of First Refusal report shows like the last year, month by month, the last 12 months, and what they were being bought back for.
And it's great too on our report that you can see here. I just printed out a copy here, but again, you can go to dvcresalemarket.com and take a look at the report. We'll show you exactly how many contracts for every single Disney Vacation Club resort were sold and how many exactly were bought back, right? So I could go online and say, okay, so 246 contracts for the Boardwalk were sold by DVC Resale Market, and they bought back 33 of those, right? So it's about 13.4%. And then going all the way up to Old Key West, 310, but they bought back like 96 of those contracts.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I really think it's good for people to have an understanding of this, though, if they're first-time purchasers really going in, or make sure that you're using an agent or a company that does have a understanding of right of first refusal, because it would get very discouraging if I just keep going in with these lowball offers again and again and again, and I'm never getting the contract that I want to. You have to understand that you can't put in that lowball offer with Disney. They're going to take it every time.
And we're good at telling them that. I mean, I've had some people who've come in with a lowball offer, and I've tried to explain to them, this is where they've been buying that back. So even if the offer is accepted, you do stand a high risk of having it bought back, and you won't know for about 35 days, which puts you right back at another contract.
And that's such a great point too, Sue, because we tell people like that all the time, and we say, listen, if we didn't care if you got a contract, we could sell every single listing we have within a few days, right? We'd all make money. We'd be great. But the buyers wouldn't actually have a contract at the end of the day because we're going to get paid either way. It's just Disney's going to buy that contract back. So we want you to be educated. That's what makes it so great with this audience is they've done their research. They've gone on our site. They've asked us questions. So again, research is so important. And we want you to get a contract at the end of the day. We don't want to make that phone call to say, that's the worst part of Sue and I's job.
Yes,
when we get the emails, that come out maybe once a week and says, here's the contracts that are bought back. And we have to reach out to that family and say,
sorry.
Hey, it's Derek. Like the Grim Reaper. Like, I don't want to be the Grim Reaper.
And I want to circle back to Old Key West for a second. I know we did a show on this a few weeks ago. My intuition is telling me something else is going on. This is not necessarily about inventory for them to be able to back sell if somebody can't afford Riviera. The email that went out a month or two ago to Old Key West members saying, hey, we'll buy back your points for like 75 cents a point. And that coupled with this surge in buybacks tells me they're planning something. They're planning something. And it may very well be that they're going to announce that they're doing something new with Old Key West or going to, sell maybe, there's all this speculation about what would happen with 2042. That's when the Old Key West contracts expire. You have some that are 2057.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Animal Kingdom.
Well, I mean, at Old Key
West.
At Old
Key West. Yeah.
Yep, the
you
extension.
have some contracts that got offered an extension to 2057. Anything Disney sells direct at Old Key West automatically goes to 2057. Sums up.
Or maybe they just want the majority of their inventory to have the same expiration date. Maybe they've got so much of their inventory that's going to expire at 2042, and they're starting to look at, we're going to have this disconnect.
Well, they could, if they have a lot of excess inventory, they can sell it on the resale market.
Bing, bing, bing.
Isn't that what the rest of us do? Wouldn't that be hysterical?
Yeah.
I kind of go back to time and time again that, we live in a new world now that we've emerged from over the past 18 months. And I think that's what DVC is really looking at is, what gets us to the numbers that we need to hit. Right? And if it means that we flip Old Key West contracts, then we flip Old Key West contracts. If it means that we buy back some Saratogas here and there, and because people are buying them, then we do that. I do think we're sort of getting ready for a new sort of sales tactic by them, maybe that's going to emerge within the
something's coming
within the next 6 to 8 months or more, especially once we see the Grand Floridian Tower go on sale, or not tower, but Grand Floridian building go on sale. Once we see the Disneyland Tower go on sale, I've mentioned this before, but I think we're going to see a tiered structure to how they approach these sales. So maybe you're going to have the upper level, which are those premier resorts. You're going to have the mediums, which are going to be like Riviera and Alani, and then you're going to have like marketed heavily these, not that they're lower level resorts, but a lower costing, bargain option to get into Disney Vacation Club.
Now, when you go and look at this report, you're going to notice that there are some resorts missing. Alani and Riviera are not on this list. Why? Because they don't buy back contracts at resorts they are actively selling, correct?
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Because there's just no profit margin for
Right.
them.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Riviera and Olani are very safe bets. Are very, very safe bets that they're not going to get bought back. Everything else is fair game. Now, outside of Riviera and Olani, what are you seeing? Which resorts are least likely?
Vero, Hilton Head.
Yeah.
Okay, resorts that people go to. I should have been more specific. I'm kidding.
Oh man, we
kidding.
bashed him twice in 2 shows.
There come the emails.
I'm kidding.
Boulder Ridge.
Boulder Ridge.
Yeah, Boulder Ridge is one of them. The Beach Club is another one.
Really? Mm-hmm. They don't like those points?
I think that there's not enough points over at the Beach Club right now, so it's not something that would give them a high margin.
Right. At the end of the day, that's what Disney's looking for, right?
It's
Because
the
if I
money.
have to spend X
Yep.
and sell it for X, how much am I going to make, right? And that's why
Correct.
you'll never see probably, a lot of Grand Cals bought back.
Right.
That's why you won't see Alani bought back. That's why you won't see Riviera bought back. Because, again, vacation club guides make their money, and we know this, when you're selling direct, is you're actively pushing the live inventory.
Yeah.
Nobody goes on tour as a Disney Vacation Club guide and actively says, let me tell, even if you're taking a tour at Saratoga Springs, no one actively says, I'm going to talk to you about Saratoga and how you can own here. It is called, again, in the bag of tricks, right?
Right.
They can't buy the Riviera, so I don't want them to leave. What can I sell them for? Because it's about the profit margin. And like Sue said, Beach Club is the second smallest Disney Vacation Club resort in Florida. So there's not a lot of points. It's got a pretty high price. I can't remember what are they selling for direct, the Beach Club?
It's over 200.
I know it's over $200
Yeah.
a point. So, yeah, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
And to me, Old Key West was one that I used to go down to instead of Saratoga Springs.
Yeah.
Because of the point chart. The point chart, you have low points to stay in the off seasons. When it's costing you $9 or $10 points a night for a studio, and the size of these studios are huge, it's a good value for a family.
Yeah.
Derek, Bay Lake Tower has always been one that really just sort of blows my mind on the number of buybacks that we do see from them occasionally. Is there a reason? So it sticks out on the reports,
right?
Because it is the second highest percentage bought back. So as of September, 17.9% were bought back for Bay Lake Tower, and it just, I don't know, if we go back to the margin concept, it doesn't sound like it's a huge opportunity for them, but maybe it's just because it's extremely popular.
Yeah, I think people look at that resort, and I think that's one of those things where everybody knows the Contemporary, everybody knows Bay Lake Tower. It's, again, right next to the Magic Kingdom, within walking distance. So for folks that say, I want to be there, I want to stay at Bay Lake Tower, let me get some points at Bay Lake Tower. And they're super expensive direct, too. It's crazy. Again, that's why I said I think it would be the best reality show of all time.
Right.
Just trying to figure out. Because, again, we've had people that have bought contracts with us, and they bought them back, and it makes my head just shake. Say, I cannot believe they bought that back. And then we've had people that have bought contracts, and I'm like, listen, don't pack your bags yet. You're probably not going to get that contract. And sure enough, that one passes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can see some patterns, which is all we have to go by are the statistics. But until we can, get that camera in the room.
All I'm going to say about Bay Lake and the Contemporary is they just did a refurbishment of the entire Contemporary, but they did not refurbish the Garden Wing, I believe.
Oh.
I don't know what that means.
Are you trying to start gossip?
Well, that's an interesting point.
What am I here for?
There's been a lot of rumors on that.
I moved from Virginia to start gossip.
The Garden Wing at Contemporary is the redheaded bastard stepchild of the Disney Resort family. Nobody wants the Garden Wing, okay?
When they check in and go, and here's your room, they're like, can I talk to a manager?
Why do you hate me?
Really, what
did I do wrong?
What did I do? And there are some nice rooms in the Garden Wing.
Yes,
there really, but it's in its own zip code from where the Contemporary is, but and it also has a very odd smell. There's been a lot of mildew over the years in the Garden Wing, and you are reminded of it every time.
The Garden Villas by Disney Vacation Club.
But now, when you consider how popular Bay Lake Tower is, all kidding aside,
There
They-
is
they-
a reason. There
they-
is,
Yeah.
right, Sue? Because
Yeah.
we remember
that
hearing.
was, that was
Yes.
talked about years ago, and then there was a reason, and they were talking about when they did the Bay Lake Tower, they had to do a test to make sure that the area, the land there,
didn't
would
sink,
hold
right? Yeah.
It would hold that type of building up, and the garden wing is right on the canal, so that poses a little bit of a problem.
It's right on the canal and right across from the empty land by the TTC, which is where they've always dreamed of being
Yep,
able to build
yep.
a resort, but they never can because the land won't hold.
Right.
So I think that what
Yeah.
was the original plan was to have a Bay Lake, and then there's a contemporary in the middle because
Right.
it looks like Mickey ears, right,
Yep.
like this. So believe me, if there's a way to do it, Disney would have done
Yep.
it.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
Construction's come a long way. You never know.
See what you started, Paul? All this gossip.
But then, the nice thing about right of first refusal is there is a good point to it, and it's for those of us who are members. I know, Pete, you're selling, and isn't it nice
I'm still
to?
keeping an awful lot of points.
I know, but you're
I'm
selling.
actually sitting here looking at a contract right now. That's the worst.
He's got Monera up on his screen right
I'm
now.
just
He's
looking
doing
at some
instant
stuff.
quotes. So
I'm
Don't
looking at
feel
all
bad.
sorts of stuff.
But the nice thing is, in selling a contract, and I know I sold a couple recently,
Yeah.
and if it were a different timeshare, there's no way that I would have made money on it and have used it for 30 years. And so it really helps the owners by the right of first refusal and Disney buying it back and keeping the resale
There-
prices up.
There are
It
some,
helps us.
There are some contracts that I'm selling right now. Again, I've had them for 2 years, and when all is said and done, I'm going to walk away with one of these contracts. I'm going to walk away with 15 grand,
Yeah.
and I've used the points.
Yeah.
I've used the points.
Can I get
So-
some more coffee then, Pete? Really expensive coffee.
So it's there, and there's a whole
awesome.
show in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
in that.
Great
But
point.
the right of first refusal report, I think that is. They are one of the tea leaves
Yep.
that you guys have to read,
Yep.
because when somebody comes to them and says, "I want to sell my Boulder Ridge," they have to know, okay, you want to find the right price. You want to find the price that's going to pass right of first refusal, be competitive with what's in the market right now, and going to get the seller what they want.
Right.
So those are the tea leaves you have to read. And this is I'm sure this must be a great resource.
It's a great
It
tool,
is,
and
it is.
all the agents here too as well. So again, when people start looking into this, and we have people that make offers, and it's not their fault, they don't know, right? So they might see a contract for $120 a point. They might go online and say, "This looks great. I'm going to make an offer of $50 a point," right? Of course, it's not going to sell for that, but that's where it's our job as agents is to be able to contact them and help us help you. In the words of Jerry Maguire, let me help you.
help me.
Help me to help you.
Let us help you. Let us walk you through the process. And almost always when we explain the process to them, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So again, reach out to us with all your questions before you make an offer, when you're ready to sell. We're here.
We want happy members, so we really want to educate people. We want them to get the right product for them and their family, because we don't want them to regret it a couple of years from now that they're in the wrong place
Right.
either.
Right.
And we are talking about the September report. We did get a small glimpse at the October numbers, but those are very similar to what we're talking about today. There's been no earth-shattering updates for those sort of wondering.
They bought back every Alani contract.
We gotta start over
April
now.
Fools.
But yeah, nothing earth-shattering. But these are monthly reports that come out. So
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. That was a very lively discussion, and thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week with another episode of the DVC Show. Have a great week, folks.